Hi there folks, Saber4 here. A little bit different video today while we wait on results from Richmond. We're going to look back into our beginner series and talk about some deck building strategies for new players. This is helpful for me to dip back into, even as a pretty frequent player myself, to just kind of dive in and kind of see where we are. If you're new to the channel or if you're new to the video, please like and subscribe. We're going to talk about the contents here for a second, then we'll go into the different things that are with us. We'll get a little welcome, talk about building your decks, talk about synergy in Star Wars Unlimited, constructing your opening, mid-game, flipping your leader, finding your closers, and kind of how we put it all together. Welcome. You know, you're here, if you're finding Star Wars Unlimited with Jump to Lightspeed, you're here at a good time. There's a good established player base. We are in season 0 for a bunch of the major tournaments and qualifiers. And we're at the start of a rotation. And so you've got a lot of things that are setting the stage for what's to come. They're kind of learning from things as they go in some senses with the big tournaments and improving with each one. We got some good feedback from the things in Liverpool and in Denver, and the Richmond tournament sounds like it is going much better. And that's hopefully a trend that will continue. Since it's a beginner video, let's talk about some game basics. This particular game, Star Wars Unlimited, is based on the idea of simultaneous turns, and it's actions back and forth. So it's your action, it's my action. It's your action, it's my action. And the action phase of the turn progresses like that until both players consecutively pass, which also involves grabbing the initiative token, or it might mean that both players pass and the initiative token stays where it is. But ending the action phase of the turn is when everybody kind of runs out of things to do. Unlike some other games, you're going to draw 2 cards per turn, and everything that you draw can be used as a resource. So nothing that they have made so far are cards that you cannot put down in your resource row. So there are not going to be any hard blocks to you advancing to the next stage of the game because of your draw. A couple of simple game rules and things to remember. One is the principle of do as much as you can. So whatever is printed on that card, you do as many things as you are able to do in the mechanics of that card at the time. Number 2, cost always means printed cost. So when you have something that refers to the cost on a card, always look at the number in the top corner of the card, not at any other alternative cost that you might have played. Number 3, understand the rules of the game. And understand that cards are there to break the rules. In cases where things are not clear, do what the card says to do. And so those 3 simple kind of guidelines will get you past a lot of early game woes as you try and figure out how the game operates. You always pay cost. Cost always refers to the one in the corner. You do as much as you can and follow the rules until the card tells you to do something different. So you're building your first deck. Let's talk quickly about the pillars of a 3-way card game. And I say it's a 3-way card game. There's a little bit more complexity than that, but the pillars of Star Wars Unlimited are aggression, mid-range, and control. Aggression looks to use multiple small, low-cost units and rapidly defeat your opponent's base total. You very rarely are looking to trade units into one another. Aggression is typically weak towards mid-range decks. Mid-range decks are something that follow the cost curve of the game. So it is a orderly progression from something that costs 2 resources to something that costs 3 or 4 or 5, all the way up to the top end of its deck. They will frequently value trade. So they'll use one of their cards that's on the board that has the potential to eliminate an opponent's unit and stay on the board at the same time, or give them kind of a 2-for-1 value. And these are typically weak towards control decks. Control decks use events and actions to remove threats. They play high-impact cards that are late in the game. They often run very light on those smaller units, and as a result, they are weak to that fast pace that you can see with aggressive decks. This doesn't mean that you're always going to lose to your weakness, and it doesn't mean that you're easily going to beat your strength. This comes down to deck building, draw, and the player, and you see that a lot, especially as you move towards bigger, more competitive tournaments. Theme decks are less likely to show up, and they might be very present and prevalent when you're talking about your weekly play, but you're pretty unlikely to see, a, a Hera deck or a Nalase come away with a big major win, at least right now. All right, so you're building your first deck. Let's talk about some of the card types very quickly. Units, upgrades, and events are the three things that are the major card types in this game. Units are the durable unit cards signified in the upper left corner where it says unit, and it'll tell you which arena it goes into, ground or space, in the upper right. Units have a cost, and they also have down at the bottom a little set of numbers that define their attack value and their hit points. These are kind of the staple building blocks of most decks, and these are going to be the cards that you use to take actions during the course of the game. Upgrades. I showed you here the twin laser turret. The twin laser turret is an upgrade. It tells you that right here in that upper corner. These are cards that modify and empower the units, either through they gain experience. This particular thing is an upgrade that is a weapon. Pilots are a new type of upgrade that are here with Jump to Lightspeed, and since this is a Jump to Lightspeed video, you will see quite a few pilots kind of scattered throughout a lot of the decks that you would build at this time. Some upgrades have negative effects when played to your opponent's units. We'll talk about those at a different time. And then events. Short-acting cards that alter the game state right now. They cost a couple of resources, usually a little bit less than playing units, and they are discarded once their effect is complete. So in this game, when you play an event, you resolve that event completely before you move on to the next thing. You might get what this game calls nested actions, where you kind of continue to resolve actions as you go, but you always wind up resolving the event that you played, then resolving any nested actions. So those are the main types of things that you will be putting in a deck. Now let's look a little bit about the importance of balance. A deck that is entirely full of units may present a consistent threat. A couple of well-timed events can mean that somebody who is not playing entirely units can outrace you. A deck full of events might have very few units that are there to present a threat. Balance also applies to the cost of units, not just their presence and absence in a deck. Smaller units can be too easy to remove. Here I showed you Maz Katana. She can grow to be something pretty big, and she can be very useful in the right situation. But she's got one power, she's got one health, she's very easily taken off the board. If you filled your deck with a bunch of stuff like Maz, you might be able to make her pretty big. You might be able to attack quickly. You might be able to be very aggressive with things. But those can also be vulnerable to a lot of removal. I showed you the Annihilator and Gore because here are two of the biggest units that you can play, things that cost some of the most. And if you fill your deck with too many of those large units, you might have difficulty in the early game. Hello, both dogs. Are you going to join me on the couch? Yeah? Yeah? Hello. Hello. Thank you. Another thing to talk about in Star Wars Unlimited is the idea of synergy. Synergy is a shared trait or a different type of thing that's on the card. They might be thematic keywords like ambush, shielded, or grit, but they are things that play together to make your cards more powerful based on how they fit. Certain leaders, certain units, certain events work off of these abilities to make sure that they maximize their impact. Some things that I've showed you down here, I showed you three things that are all underworld. Cad Bane, they're the leader in the middle, is a... Okay, good. We can get outside. Cad Bane is able to utilize underworld cards when you play them to deal damage to your opponent's units. The Hylabon Enforcer, I talked about grit for a second. He has grit. So if you have a deck full of things with grit, then those units all grow in power as their HP pool shrinks. I talked about ambush. Forlom has ambush. He's able to come out and ready and attack immediately. And so all of these are underworld trait, but different types of ways that you could have synergy with your deck. Choosing a leader is a little bit more personal at times. How do you pick one? Well, depends on what you want to play. If you're playing tabletop and playing with a bunch of friends and you want to play thematic, play thematic. You know, get yourself a deck out there and put a deck together that are Hera and the Spectres and play against Thrawn. Have at it. It is a great way to play the game. Pit Tarkin against Leia and let one of the stalwarts of the Empire and one of the faces of the rebellion square off. Great way to play. Choose a favorite character, make a theme deck. A great way to do this when you're starting is to tweak one of the pre-made decks. Each of the sets so far has given us starter decks or spotlight decks. Those are a great entry point because they really do a good job of teaching the different mechanics as you go along. If you've opened some packs and you pulled a showcase, put a deck together around your showcase. There's nothing quite like, going to that first little local tournament that you want to and playing that showcase card. Have at it. Plenty of options exist. There's 18 leaders per set. We've only had 2 that are suspended so far. So, if you're opening packs and you see a Boba Fett that is not from set 4, or you see a Jango Fett, unfortunately, those are not things you can play with right now, but everything else, go for it. And choose a leader that fits not only your play style, but your card pool. If you've got a lot of things that are looking for smuggle and you opened up, you want to run Hondo, but you opened up a bunch of set 4 packs, you're not going to have a lot of things that help out. That's just not what that set's built around. So choose a leader that fits the card pool that you possess. The next step here, choosing a base. You can easily go with any secondary color. Some of them match better with different leaders, and in several of the videos that are here on this channel, I cover a leader and I cover them all the way down through some of their options. A basic base in this game has 30 HP. It's great for most builds. It's a good starting point. It's a good reference point for kind of where you're going. The set 1 rare bases all have 25 hit points. They all have an epic action, which means that it is a once per game, do this thing as your action. And it allows you to do different specific things. The most commonly used pair are Tarkentown, which is an aggression, and that lets you deal damage to a damaged unit. And I've shown you Energy Conversion Lab, which allows you to give the ambush keyword to a unit that costs 6 or less. Set 2 rare bases did not include epic actions, but had a durable effect of some kind, and it generally revolved around the leader. In this case, I showed you Pal City, which has 1 extra hit point to each leader unit you control. That one, a lot of people have talked about specifically when we talk about Twin Suns, because that means that each leader, not just one leader that you control, gets +0/+1. The set 4 rare bases were much more variable. They went from 27 up to 35 hit points. They adjusted the math of the game through either the draw, through hand size, through your opening. I'll put the video in the comments where I've talked much more extensively about this, though that might be a little bit beyond just beginner play. Building your opening. One of the key things to playing Star Wars Unlimited well is to have something to play. This game is about actions, and if you don't have units on the board or you don't have a good, strong opening, you're not going to have things to do. So you want to build your deck in a way that you are able to make a turn 1 play with a few exceptions. So here are some things to consider. You can't have more than 3 copies of a single card in your deck without it being one specific card. which we're not building around, so we're not going to talk about it. You're going to have some diversity. So you're going to have a kind of wide array of things that are in that opening hand, and you want some diversity because you might be going first, you might be going second. There's no way to know before you roll the dice to start the game, or flip a coin, or roll a chance cube, or do whatever it is that you're going to do to determine initiative. But you want to be able to do something other than just one specific type of play, because that's only going to be 6% of your deck. So, diversity. Consistency. You want to be able to reliably draw something. In your opening hand, 1 out of every 5 cards in the deck, you're going to see... Reliable draw means that 1 out of every 5 cards in the deck should cost 1 or 2 and be playable on turn 1. So if you have somewhere between 10 and 12 cards that are turn 1 plays, depending on the size of your deck, you're pretty reliable for being able to draw a turn 1 play. Your turn 1 play should establish presence. Even if you intend to trade units, you want to start to establish a board presence early on. And then finally, your turn 1 play should establish threat. The speed of the game relies on how you establish that, and presenting a threat to your opponent's base that they have to respond to, or putting pressure on the opponent's units that are there. I showed you a few examples that are here at the bottom. The Battlefield Marine there on the bottom left is one of the biggest possible units that you can play turn 1. He's with one of the most aggressive leader pairings that exist. And so is a really common and really... This is the card that Sabine hopes to play turn 1, because it represents about the biggest threat that she can put on the board. Legion General Pride is a big threat if you're talking about being able to have initiative. Not only does he have a nice big body, but his on-attack ability allows him to do more damage than just his 2. Presence would be something like the Pike Sentinel, which blocks your opponents from being able to attack on the ground that next turn. Or Director Krennic here, who not only provides a discount to units that have a when defeated ability, but he is also shielded, so it makes him very difficult to remove. And then some removal cards. So the X-34 Landspeeder is able to come in and ambush, and so if your opponent's unit only had 2 health, there's a chance that you can just clear it right off the board. Shoot Down is another thing that's in there. That's a event that you could play first turn, and that would deal 3 damage to a space unit. There's only a few fighters out there, only a few turn 1 plays out there as far as space goes, that have more than 3 health. And so this card is able to not only eliminate that threat, but deal 2 damage to a base if it does. Hello, little girl. Do you want a spot on the couch? Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Okay. Good girl. Mid-game. Your mid-game is the bridge between that first couple of turns until the time that your leader can be deployed. What you're using in these turns depends on the construction and style of your deck, the pillar that you fit in. Aggressive decks are going to want to use this time to push damage to the base, because when they flip that leader, they're going to really want to step on the gas and try and close the game out. Mid-range decks tend to answer their opponent's threats either with value trades or tempo. A value trade is something that I use in order to eliminate a threat that's on the board and hopefully keep that card on the table at the same time. So it allows me to effectively do what we call 2 for 1. I played 1 card, it eliminated up to 2 of yours. That's a value trade. Control decks may use 1 for 1. They might use events that straight remove cards, and those things are the right value for them because they are looking to keep the board clear until it gets time for their leader flip and their end game. The mid part of the game is quite often one of the places where you will see events. Removal events, I showed you direct hit, have cost in this game typically ranging from 3 to 6. Damage events typically cost somewhere between 1 and 5. I showed you Trench Run as a pump event that's out here, which has a low cost and provides a little bit of fast attack. It means that you need a unit on the board, but this allows you to bump one of your units up in power and make a quick attack where you can either trade it off for another unit or you can attack the base. And then exhaust events. I showed you Cat and Mouse, which allows you to kind of take some tempo. You can play Cat and Mouse to exhaust one of your opponent's units and ready one of yours, potentially kind of continuing to push damage while stopping them from being able to do so to you. Flipping your leader. I said that this is the bridge to a flip. Flipping your leader in this is a flipping or deploying, is where you move that leader from his horizontal side to his vertical, and from the leader space down with your base out into the arena that he belongs in. Most static abilities that you have, and I talked about this when we analyzed leaders in a different video, most static abilities stay in place. And so if you have Gar Saxon as your leader, he continues to add value to things that are that have any kind of an upgrade. Most active abilities are improved. Obi-Wan is an example of an active ability. He takes an action, he heals a damage from a unit. That's upgraded. Now when he heals a damage from a unit, he also deals a damage to a different unit. You get a leader unit for free. And that's important because here Obi-Wan, a 4/7 Sentinel, didn't cost you any resources to deploy. It just meant that once you had 6 resources, you can put him on the field. And so that is a very powerful turn that all of your decks are kind of looking to build around, and work to get here is the work of getting from your beginning and mid game into your end game state. Let's talk about your closers. The remaining portion of that game is going to focus on how you get from that leader flip to finishing out the game. Aggressive leaders want a late kick. They want to push. It's often also called reach. And these are the things to get that last little bit of damage. I give you Wrecker as an example because Sabine is still one of the most powerful decks that's out there. She runs with Energy Conversion Lab, which I've also shown you, and she'll put Wrecker down with Energy Conversion Lab and deal 5 damage to a unit that's on the table, possibly clearing one out of the way, and then she'll ambush with Wrecker to overwhelm and attack the base for the rest of whatever 7 doesn't finish. This is a powerful piece of reach for Sabine because not only can she clear some threats out of her way, possibly eliminating Sentinels or eliminating things that might take some of her other cards off the board, but it is a big push of damage all at once. And so that's an example of reach. Midrange often uses powerful units consistent with their cost curve. And so Luke is past the place where most of your leaders are going to come in. But he's consistent with that next step on the curve, and he has a very, very powerful when played effect. So he's able to remove a unit and stick around. He's a 6/7, which is a absolutely huge ground unit with Restore 3, and so every time that he swings at the base, you get a 9-point swing in what's going on, because if he swings at the base and deals 6 damage, you heal 3 from your own, and so it's a big, big shift if you've got Luke on the board. And then finally, Control often looks at late game units. We've got a 7 out here, or we've got a 7 out here with Luke. You've got a 9 out here with Adventure. It's 2 turns later on a natural curve. But these are big, powerful, heavy hitting units. He hits for a little bit more than Luke, but every time the Avenger swings, it also removes a non-leader unit from the table. And so this not only helps them to finish out the game quickly, but it also helps to control the board size and to keep doing what they're doing while a unit is out there doing damage late game. So how do we put this all together? There is no hard and fast rule for numbering. I've got some suggestions for you 10 to 14 turn one plays, and that's 1 or 2 cost. More aggressive decks might play more than that. Control decks, less might be just fine. The Luke deck that I have on this channel runs 19 things that could be played on turn 1. So 19 things in that deck cost 1 or 2. He's very aggressive. He's very space-based. He's a good jump to Lightspeed entry point. He's a little advanced to play, but a really good place to kind of see where you can go with some of this. The boss deck that I've played on this channel has only 5, none of which are units. And so he's looking turn 1 to just go ahead and grab initiative and start removing whatever it is you play. Mid-game dominates my card pool. The Cad Bane Tarkentown deck that I have on this channel runs 28 cards. Out of 50, runs more than half that are meant to be played somewhere between the second turn and the leader flip. The Sabine deck is very dominated in the mid-game because she's aggression-based. She has 31. She has a huge pool of cards that are meant to be played sometime after the first turn and before we get to real closers. Closers have presence, but you don't go overboard, because if you have a deck that is full of closers, you start to have the real chance that you're going to draw 1 or 2 of them into your opening hand, and they just sit there. And now it's a choice between a card that you could play this turn or one of your cards that you're going to play in 3 turns, as far as which thing you need to put down as a resource. My Sabine deck, the same Sabine deck, has 9 closers, 9 things that are meant to be played post-flip. The Luke deck has only 5. As a matter of fact, Luke is the most expensive thing in the deck to play. The Piet deck that's on this channel, one of them that I've played with here, because he has the ability to resource cheat and to shrink the cost of the ships that he plays, has 16. So he has more closers than he has turn 1 plays. And so, like I said, there's no hard and fast rule, but just know that your opening plays should have enough space that the math favors them being in your hand. The mid-game is going to have a more dominant space, and you're likely to see 2 or 3 of those in your opening hand every time. And then your closers have a place in your card pool, but they are not excessive. Couple final thoughts here. Every deck has a vulnerability. Just because you go out there and you play your deck against your best friend's deck and he plays the weakness of your deck and slaughters you over and over again doesn't mean that you're bad at this. If one deck dominated everything, this game would collapse, and the game would collapse down to just playing that one. It's the reason why Boba Fett and Django are suspended from competitive play. Those 2 decks were 40% of final tables in their day because they were just better. And so every deck is meant to have a vulnerability. Drawing in the deck is part luck, part construction. If you have followed some of the rules and some of those suggestions in the slide before, you will note that as you draw from your deck, you will see more of the types of cards that you need than the types of cards that you do not. And then finally, a well-designed deck can often save itself from a poor draw. And so when you are drawing cards in your deck, if it is well-designed, the first time might not be great, but you have some ways that you can save that particular position, and then move on from there and to your next phase and your next draw. Nothing simulates practice. I am happy to have new players here. I'm happy to have old players here who look at these kinds of things, get out there, get reps with the cards. I'm going to link some very helpful resources here with the video, including some things about like playing pre-releases, playing draft and sealed. But I am very glad to be a resource for this, and hopefully if you're a new player to this, you have gained something from watching this video. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.